So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for coming back in, for joining the afternoon session. We hope you enjoyed the morning session of the startup competition. The afternoon session is something slightly different. We're gonna have a lot more educational, thought-provoking content. We have 3 panels lined up this afternoon. The first, our Smart City panel, talking about the digitalization of future urban life. Followed by our healthcare panel, talking about key investment themes across the biopharma medtech space. Finally, our impact panel, investing for social good. So we're very excited to have the speakers here with us today. And hopefully you've all had enough coffees, enough food, and are ready to listen to some fairly interesting discussions. Before we kick off the Smart City panel, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank one of our sponsors, Morrison & Foerster, which has been a longtime supporter of ATEC, actually. With over 1,000 lawyers across 16 offices, Morrison & Foerster is a global law firm dedicated to delivering business-oriented results to clients across Asia, United States, and Europe. In the past 5 years, MoFo lawyers have advised over 1,300 startups and investors on venture financings of over $100 billion and on M&A matters of over $725 billion, especially in the healthcare and technology sectors. And so today we actually have a partner from Morrison & Foerster, Thomas Zhou, who will be moderating our Smart Cities discussion. So I'd like to invite him up onto the stage, as well as all the participants for the Smart City panel, including Dan Wong, who will be joining us via the magic of Hopin.
Thank you, Voon. Thanks a lot for having me moderate this really timely panel. Our panel, of course, is on smart cities. And as many of you know, Asia is home to 16 of the world's 28 megacities with populations of 10 million or above. And as a result, there are limited resources and increased urbanization, and many Asian cities are seeking to focus on transforming themselves into smart cities. So in Hong Kong, in 2017, the government launched its Smart City Blueprint, which set out 76 initiatives in 6 smart areas, namely smart mobility, smart living, smart environment, smart people, smart government, and smart economy. And over the summer, the Hong Kong government launched the second iteration of the blueprint, which set out over 130 new initiatives beyond those initial 76 to build on that 2017 framework. And so those of us in Hong Kong who are using FPS for payments or Leave Home Safe app to attend venues such as this one, or even the free public Wi-Fi, these are all, we're all beneficiaries of this blueprint. So today, our Smart City panel will cover the macro market opportunities that we are seeing in smart city investing, as well as with the benefit of these distinguished panelists, we'll learn more about some of the specific investments that they've made and where they see the investment thesis moving forward in the future. And because ATEC is a community of some of the leading entrepreneurs in Asia, we'll have our panelists give us some of their insights to the entrepreneurs as to how to best develop their business in this environment. So I'm honored to be moderating this fantastic panel in person and remote. Let me go ahead and introduce the panelists. So first, here we have Michael Kwok. Michael is the chair of Arup East Asia. As you may know, Arup is the global engineering, design, planning, and project management firm for the built environment. And in the pink shirt, we have Vincent C. He is the head of new ventures at Swire Properties. And at Swire Properties, he also manages their corporate venture capital fund. A man who needs no introduction to my left is Benson Tam, the chairman and founding partner of Venturis Group, a venture capital firm based in Beijing at the forefront of smart city technology. And joining us remotely in Hong Kong on his last day of quarantine is Dan Wong, the GM of Global Innovation at the MTR Corporation. Thank you all for joining. So let's kick it off. Because smart city is a name that is still somewhat new to some of us. Let's have Benson tell us a little bit about why smart cities and where we are now. So Benson, you've had an illustrious career from your early years as an investment banker and over 3 decades of experience as a private equity investor at leading firms in Asia. Now, after such a long period of time and such a successful career, others in your position might have opted to take it easy a bit, retire or spend time with family, work on corporate philanthropy. Yet in 2019, you decided to embark on setting up Venturis in this brand new smart city tech landscape. Tell us what drove you at this time to set up Venturis.
Yeah, well, thank you, Thomas, and thank you everybody for taking the risk. Okay. Well, can you hear me now? So thank you, Thomas, and thank you everybody for taking the risk and wearing your mask. It's very uncomfortable, trust me. The reason is this. I think it's very clear from COVID, the world has gone digital. That's how you order your ticket. That's how you Zoom. That's how you have your meetings. So the world has gone digital. And what I'm seeing also is that this whole new digital economy is on fire. Now, I would like you to ask yourself one question, which is, if the whole world is going digital economy, where is this digital economy? And I tell you, I think it is in these smart cities. Because how can you have a city that doesn't have the digital infrastructure to be on this digital economy without all the technology, the 5G, the AI, the IoT, the augmented reality, everything? And that's why, if you ask me why, it was really the aha moment came in about 2017 when 3 of the mayors in China actually came to one of our invested company and say, we need to get our city smart. We need to upgrade it because otherwise we're going to lose out. And that was really the moment. Now, because of that, I think this will be a huge market. Our latest research is saying that smart city technology in China alone by next year is a $4 trillion market, $4 trillion US dollar market next year. Okay, 800 cities, towns, and districts in China for the last 10 years has been upgrading to smart. Not 10 years later, but 10 years ago. Okay, of all the people, my good friend Michael sees it. Vincent is doing it in Hong Kong. And so that's why I think this is the greatest opportunity on earth right now. I would also say the other thing, which is, if you really think about all the problems we have, almost everything is to do with the city. 70% of all CO2 emission comes from cities. Look at Hong Kong at night. The lights are ablaze. It's beautiful. Why? Because we're wasting energy. Simple, correct? And if you also look at the congestion everywhere, the pollution, almost everything is to do with cities. So that's why hopefully we're not just going to make money out of it. We're going to solve some of the biggest problems. But closest to my heart really is that if there's one legacy I can give to my daughter, who is 26 years old today, I want to give her a green city, a convenient city, somewhere she can perform her best because she can be much more productive in the city. So for all these reasons, I decided that, yeah, I should come out. And one last thing, I'm a failed civil engineer. Unlike Michael, who is very accomplished, I've never built a single thing, even though we were classmates all those years back. So this is my last hurrah that I can actually build something as my legacy, which is to build a city or more cities. So that's why, Thomas.
That's fantastic. So large market opportunity addressing one of the core origins of the problem and providing an impact that will be beneficial to your children and the progeny. That's wonderful. You touched on this earlier. I don't know if you want to elaborate more in terms of where we are now. You mentioned that China has adopted, many cities in China are already adopting the smart cities. So for some people here, it may not be as apparent how much development there is, how much is actually being deployed now. Do you care to elaborate a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, Thomas, it's very easy to not see it because do you see the technology in this room? Do you see the Wi-Fi or anything? You don't. You absolutely don't. The best technology are always invisible. So instead of telling you how big the market is and everything else, I would just point you to 3 places you must go to when you can travel back to China. Number 1, please go to Hangzhou. That is where they actually have a city brain that basically runs the city. It's almost like a bigger version of a control panel. They can deploy the fire services when there is a fire. If there's a crisis, they can do that. It's all at the command center, which they call Hangzhou City Brain. It directs the traffic. It does other stuff. Hangzhou, please go there. Especially within Hangzhou, there's a small little town just on the edge of Hangzhou called Cloud Town. 8 years ago, Ali Cloud, together with Hangzhou city government, created an experimental little town about the size of Taikushing. And this is probably the most advanced pilot town in China now. Of course, if you just go there, all you see is green leaves, boulevards and nothing else. Because like I said, the technology, you have to know what you're looking for. So Hangzhou, first of all. If you think Hangzhou is too far away, the next one you have no excuse. You must go to Shenzhen. Okay? Shenzhen city government gave an island to Tencent. I just met somebody from Tencent, Paul. An island. And we lovingly call it Penguin Island. Okay? Just like penguin as in Batman. So you should look at that because they are going to do all the experimental sort of really cool stuff in Penguin Island. In Greater Bay Area, likewise, there is a 20 square kilometer place, a roughly size of Hong Kong Island, that the government has given over to Baidu and say, this is where you can redo all the roads and try autonomous vehicles. So it's also there. Something else that is going to happen next year is Luohu. Everybody, I'm sure you've been to Luohu. You go for massage, you go for other stuff, you go for the things that you shouldn't buy there, right? Guess what? One of our companies is taking over the whole city management operation of that next year. The whole of that community will be run by one of our subsidiaries. So again, and if you want a super duper latest, cutting edge, future, almost smart town, then you should go to just outside of Beijing. Is this new administrative center, Xiong'an, that Arab and Michael are imagining and designing. And guess what? They fully expect to finish that city in 8 years. 8 years, they'll finish it. So that's what is happening. So I want to show people that it's not just 800 city, towns, and districts. It's not just 4 trillion. It's happening. And I think to leave you with the last answer is, in 5 to 10 years, if I ask my daughter, which city do you want to live in? I think the decision is very simple. Just like you choose a hotel, you choose because you want one with a Wi-Fi, right? If your secretary ever checks you into a hotel without Wi-Fi, you say, are you dumb? Dumb hotel, dumb cities. 10 years later, my daughter, over my dead body, will I live in a dumb city. She is already living in Singapore, which is probably one of the smartest one in Southeast Asia. I think the digital native era, the young kids will always want to go and work and live and play in smart cities. That's why I think in 5 to 10 years, actually, it's not a choice. Whoever, just like a hotel that doesn't have Wi-Fi, have to have it. And whichever city by that time is not smart, will run the risk of being dumb. So that's where we
So
are.
we don't want to miss out, right? It's here, and it's going to be inevitable. It's fantastic. So Michael, you've left an indelible signature on Asia's most iconic structures, including the Bird's Nest in Beijing, Beijing Capital Airport Terminal 3, and closer to home, the HSBC Tower and Stonecutters Bridge. Now, with this smart city revolution, Arup has been working on 2 smart city projects in Hong Kong, Smart City Kowloon East and the Quayside. Can you tell us more about some of the technologies you're implementing into those smart cities?
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. Yes, indeed, Arrow has designed many of the iconic buildings or projects around the world. But I think the future iconic projects are going to be smart building, smart city, and net zero development. Simply because, we're not going to forever building the tallest, the longest, the biggest. I think the one is going to be iconic will be don't respond to urban and environmental issues and really meet people's needs. And it has to be the smartest and the most sustainable. The 2 projects you mentioned, the Smart City Kowloon East and the Quayside, is 2 of the many smart building projects or sustainable development that Arrow has designed. But to me, I think smarts mean a lot of things. It also means resilience, green, sustainable, happy, healthy. So it is, as what Benson said, it has to be smart. I mean, nobody wants to live in a dumb city. And taking the 2 projects you just mentioned, example, the award-winning Quayside project actually adopt 40 innovative ideas in the design process, from passive to active design, and adopt some of the very innovative systems like the air induction units, the humidification system with solar hot system, rainwater recycling system, integrated green space, indoor garden, etc., etc. So the project actually focused a lot of the sort of people-centric technologies. And also, we focus a lot on wellness and sustainability. It is one of the first WELL Gold certified building in Hong Kong, really complementing its achievement in human health and well-being. The other project, the Kowloon East Smart City, actually consists of the former, as people who live in Hong Kong, the Kai Tak Airport, the old site, and also Kwun Tong, and also the Kowloon Bay area. It is used to be I would say, the sort of manufacturing industrial base district. It's where people would not link as a smart city as such. But actually, the whole district is very quickly transforming into a sort of a core business district for Hong Kong, really to support Hong Kong's sort of continuous economic development. So the project the approach we take is really make use of people-focused technology and try to transform this district into a vibrant, smart, and sustainable CBD2 of Hong Kong. And ICT and smart technology actually play a very important part of it. It's a real important enabling factor. Just to name a few, video analytics and machine learning are used to alleviate traffic congestion. Augmented reality is used to disseminate real-time information related to roadworks to various government department, general public. There's smart lampposts who collect and disseminate big data to help with more efficient use of energy and also resources, in turn to reduce air pollution. And we also use smart positioning and navigational technology to improve pedestrian navigation. So, I mean, it is a very busy district. So, I mean, you do need this type of smart application to help with the walkability. So the current technology really allows us to gather and simulate data for all the building and urban system, enable them actually to talk to each other. I mean, this really requires extensive employment for IoT device and computational capability. So with the help of cloud computing, AI-powered device, now we're able to connect all user and operator, and so they can directly communicate, and we actually allow the user's autonomy to be able to control the outcome. So I think this is now a very important juncture of turning that into a more sort of a smart management of cities and building.
Fantastic. Now, one of your projects is Neuron, an AI, IoT, smart building digital platform. Some of these technologies that you mentioned earlier, how they're all talking to each other, is that through the Neuron product?
Yeah. Well, Neuron is one of these, I would say, smart building, state-of-the-art smart building platform, which we developed. The main function it really is to generate data from different systems, but also to maximize the efficiency of the building operation, minimize energy consumption, reduce carbon emission, and promote healthy environment. It is the integrate BIM, IoT, and data analytics together, and really also be supported by domain expertise. I mean, Arab, we have many domain experts, and it's in a single term, it is a digital twin approach. But it also means that you can create digital assets alongside with your physical assets. And there's a lot of values come with that. Firstly, it really achieves energy saving by using big data and AI technology. It will enhance building management visibility. You won't be able to control it if you can't see it. So to have the visibility through this digital twin approach is very important, and hence it also enables the data-driven approach and making response to the operation very quickly, either by human or by machine. Once you have this data.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, Vincent, our Shanghai offices are at Taiguhui, and whenever I visit, and it's been a little bit of time given the pandemic, I've always been really impressed by how they've transformed the use of these buildings in a mixed-use environment. And as I understand it, Swire Properties also uses Neuron in its Taiguhui property in Hong Kong. Now, you are leading the charge. One of your two roles is leading the charge within Swire Properties to adopt these new technologies. We've heard about some of these fascinating technologies that have been developed or integrated by Arup. How about Swire? What are you guys most excited about in terms of integrating tech?
Yeah, we're quite excited at Swire Properties to adopt a wide range of technologies. And like Michael said, it's about our customers, the well-being of our customers, the sustainability of buildings, how do we make our customers more productive, happier, and well within our properties in a sustainable and efficient manner. So we look across the range of technologies. With Arab, we've been working on Neuron for a few years now, and one of the companies to pilot the technology. Hopefully, one day on Benson's list, it'll be only Swire Properties, places that you have to visit first. So I'd like to add a fourth. If you can visit Tiantan, which is our new center opening in Pudong, it will have a lot of the technologies as well to help with the well-being of people visiting the district, including a wellness track and a lot of invisible technologies that will enhance your experience when you're in Tiantan. So we look at sustainability, productivity of our tenants, productivity of our customers, and efficient building efficiencies as well.
Great. And so then the other leg of your responsibility is heading the corporate venture capital fund at Swire. It's a $50 million fund that invests from Series A to Series C and focusing on prop tech and other areas. Tell us about some of the existing investments you've made. I think Pickupp was one of those investments, wasn't it?
That's right. We started the corporate venture capital fund last year in the midst of the pandemic. We do see a lot of opportunities to help companies grow and to pilot them and to really embrace them and promote them to our partners. And so we started the corporate venture capital fund last year. It's a $50 million US fund, so it's of Series A to Series C. We've seen a lot of promising companies and coming out of Cyberport and Hong Kong as well. Obviously, we're a place where there's a lot of cities, a lot of buildings here, and we are one of the highest quality cities in the world. So we're able to sort of really leverage these technologies to make our buildings the best there are in the region, if not in the world. So other than Pickupp, for Pickupp, it's a great company that really helps us embrace e-commerce and store to store and store to door deliveries, and really help our tenants and our customers enjoy our facilities better. So we've also looked at retail analytics companies. We are in the midst of closing a deal, and we are looking. We've also invested in a sustainability technology company that optimizes the way air conditioning works. It sounds really boring, but air conditioning is about 20% of a building's energy, and if you're able to reduce that by 10%, it really helps us achieve the goal of becoming a net zero company by 2030.
And what other areas are not yet invested companies? What other sectors are you particularly bullish on?
Yeah, we are a few verticals that we're looking at. There's the B2B side of our business, which is helping our tenants perform better. So tenant experience, making sure that our buildings are safe, sustainable, and so we're looking at indoor air quality monitors or IoT that really enhances the productivity of the office. We're looking at retail technologies to really help our customers experience our malls in a way that are superior to our competitors, and also in a way that they feel well, they feel that they always want to come back. I'm sure you already do, but hopefully we can do an even better job there. And on the sustainability side, I guess all of our, whether it's our hotels, our residential apartments, and the office buildings, it's always, we're working with partners to make sure that we build effectively, we build safely, and it's something that would last the ages, right? There's a lot of technology that can be put into place where 20 to 30 years later, the buildings will still look new and they'll still be sustainable. And I think that Swire has been very proud of our ability to continue to do that and lead the charge there.
Thank you. So we've heard from the corporate venture capital perspective. Now, Benson, Venturis recently announced 131 million Series A funding off of an original target of only 80 million. Tell us more about, we've had Vincent tell us a little bit about his deals. Tell us about some of your early investments that helped prove out the thesis and how you want to spend this new fresh powder that you have.
Thank you, Thomas. Our challenge is quite specific, which is, as I said, we are focused on smart cities, and there are already 800 of them in China. Roughly speaking, I need these technologies to ramp to at least serve 100, 200, or 300 million customers fast. So at scale is very important. Number two, in China, 8 years is a lifetime. Xiong'an, this new city, will be built in 8 years. There's a reason why it's 8 years, because roughly that's 2 mayors, like sort of tenure. Okay, so we want to finish it in 2. So the question really is, how do you get that big in that fast a time? And to cut the story short, we take the platform approach. The platform approach means that it allows everybody to build at the same time. If you go to Xiong'an, all the cranes are doing. The hotel, the train station, the hospital, the fire station, everybody's building together. You have to have a platform. Number two, I need everybody to be able to plug and play, meaning the whole thing needs to be integrated. So that's why Ventures basically took a platform approach. And one of the things that we decided to do is basically, instead of doing a fund, which is not fast enough, is to do a group structure. Group structure is designed almost like the corporate equivalent of a platform. Now, within that, what we've done in the last, I would say, 26, 27 months, we were started in 2019, 4th of April. There's a specific reason for that. So we started then. We now have 4, I would say, mission-critical technology company. 1, smart energy. Every single city needs smart energy solutions. That one is dominant in Tianjin and going national. And they are setting the energy standards in China. Number 2, I would say, is smart operating system management, which is basically saying it is complex data from all the different systems. So we have a company that's, again, the leader in the field, second only to Huawei in terms of what they're doing. And they have 70,000 employees doing it across 170 cities in China at scale, doing data. We also invested in a third company which is Smart City Management. This is the company that we have that is partnering with Shenzhen and taking over Luohu to run it. They have already tested running a 1 million community, roughly the size of Taikushing. And they have been running it for 3 years. And some of the results are amazing. Crime rate down 88%. Congestion down by a lot. Energy down by 30%. So that's what smart city management can do. So that's the third company. And then the fourth company that we are launching very soon is on smart building. So between energy, building, city management, and operating system, which is data, I think those are the four things you can't get away from a city management, from a city, smart city. So I think we have formed the core. In about 7 months, we form a core. These are companies that are not startup. These are all almost pre-IPO companies, except one. 70,000 people, 170 cities, covering millions of square meters of space and so on, at scale, because otherwise I can't get there in 8 years. So that's what we're doing. And then next thing, now that I have the core, what we're doing for Series B is that, okay, now we have the core. We can actually use the full core to build almost any other systems now. Okay, so we are starting to do that. And so this time around, we are looking for sovereign funds who are looking at the national level, and we are looking for big corporate institutions who share our vision. And so this time around, we're looking at it differently. The last time around, actually, we looked for all the family businesses because they are the ones who actually needed all of this because they have all the properties, they have all the hotels. This is the fastest and only way they can finish everything in 8 years. So again, I mean, very different approach. I think Vincent is right. That is a very right approach for Swire. Likewise for Michael. I look forward to partnering with all of you. Yeah, I think also for the audience, we are now at about 1997 on the internet era as far as smart cities are concerned. And nobody knows what the future is like. So in a sense, we are all figuring it out and inventing it as it goes. But just like I still remember in 1997, a lot of people asked me, nah, this internet thing is just unreal. Forget it. This is all pipe dream, hot air. Well, I can tell you this is about 2 years away from mainstream. You'll hear a lot about smart cities in 2 years. And I think, as I say, this will explode. There's already a 4 trillion market. 800 of them are doing it. And the faster you get on the bus, the better.
Thank you. No, that's very helpful. Yes, I'm aware. Dan is next. So Dan, thank you for waiting so patiently as we've spoken. I think due to some of our experience watching the Zero presentation, we wanted to make sure we get you all at one time and not go back and forth so much. So MTR, we've talked a lot about buildings and different parts of the infrastructure. Now MTR is at the forefront of new mobility efforts and is integral to the implementation of smart cities, not only in Asia, but in Australia and Europe as well. I was looking at your last annual report, and MTR pointed to a number of vectors that would fuel its overall long-term growth, including rail tech and mobility as a service. Can you tell us a little bit, that annual report didn't go into that much detail, so can you tell us a little bit more about what you are doing to integrate mobility as a service and smart city tech into your offerings?
Sure, I'd be happy to share. It's very clear that the way people are traveling in the future, even now, I mean, the way they will travel, the choices of different transport modes, their expectations are changing before our eyes. So it's very clear for us, even as a provider like an MTR, we need to start looking into these new areas, right? And, we have, kind of from a long-term planning perspective, we're looking out 10 plus years. And in fact, in the early of last year, right before COVID, actually we shared a kind of a future of mobility vision and a roadmap that really maps out the way that we're looking at how travel patterns and the required technologies will change over time. And sets a roadmap, I think, in terms of our view of the industry overall, drawing on top of our experience. But at the same time, this is also the roadmap that we're using to then plan our investments in a very broad set of different areas, including technology. I guess I would encourage everybody to go take a look. It was actually presented at Davos last year in terms of future mobility. So that kind of, you can take a look and you can kind of see the longer term path. But this is something that I also maybe want to tap onto what Benson said at the very beginning. This future mobility is not way in the future. It's happening before our eyes. And so we are actually doing things today that is making this a reality. And I think this is very, very broad, but maybe I'll draw two examples in terms of the things that we're doing today. Okay. One of the opportunities that we see, obviously, is that there's lots of new technologies that are happening all around in different segments, right? And lots of these technology companies, they don't necessarily understand the industry. And when you think about kind of what we do and what we operate, it's very, very deep expertise here. And, somehow if you want to use technology in the right way, you need to bridge that gap. Okay. So one example we've done is that we have actually set up a joint venture in the area of using computer vision for both safety as well as for asset management. And, this is a particular company, a leading signaling company, actually in Beijing. It's a listed company, as well as an AI company that's focused on transport. So we have a JV with them to co-develop new solutions. One of those solutions is a set of technologies and sensors that we actually are starting to put in front of our trains that uses, computer vision. It uses millimeter wave LiDAR, and of course, the analytics behind that. And we're using this in two ways. One way is that we're using that to enhance safety, right? And so we want to make sure, and I think kind of, those that are familiar to Hong Kong, the headway between, metro is less than 2 minutes. It's very rare to see that kind of distance between trains anywhere else. And we're always trying to make that even closer. And as you start pushing the boundary there, we need to rely more and more on technology to make sure that we have the right safety. So we're using it that way. One of the other big items that we're using this is in terms of our better managing our assets. And we sit on top of lots of assets, and that's actually a big part of our cost. And to the extent that we can do things like conditional maintenance, predictive maintenance, we're going to then be able to lower our operating costs and then continue to offer public transport services to the public at a very, very low cost. So we're using this type of technology also to scan our tunnels and the trackside underneath to make sure that we detect faults before it happens, to make sure that we provide the right alerts. And so that's kind of one thing that we're doing. And what's interesting here is also the mode and way we're doing that. Certainly, MTR, we've done lots of joint ventures, lots of public-private partnerships, but I think this is now one of the first times we're actually doing this in the technology sector. And so this is kind of us then taking the next step. So that's kind of one example I wanted to draw out there. There's another piece that is kind of top of everybody's minds today. I'm sitting right now in quarantine, right? And so the pandemic has forever changed the way people travel. And, I think now more and more safety is a concern for both passengers as well as operators. And so now we are starting to employ more technologies that you traditionally would not think about MTR getting involved with. Things like biotechnology, things like better disinfectant solutions and technologies. And, we have done another example, also using a JV model, right? The JV model is a way to kind of closely bind kind of our operating knowledge as well as our partners in a way to develop new solutions, right, that are not maybe out there today. And so disinfection is now important, whether or not it is, you've seen our disinfectant robots being used in Hong Kong, right? But even the technology behind that, the actual solution itself. We manufacture face masks with special nanofiber that we use to protect our own staff. And so we're deploying new types of materials for our seat covers. And so we've actually set up another joint venture, this time with a Hong Kong-based technology company that's more in the area of robotics and disinfection to help us move forward in this direction. So I think kind of things are happening today as we speak, as you start tapping into these new technologies, both in terms of using them, developing new solutions, but then in terms of new business models like JVs that are taking us to that next step. And so just like what's happening at what Vincent said at Swire, we're also looking at different types of ways that we can tap into the ecosystem. And so I think these are the things that are happening today. We even have a kind of a pot of money to use for technology pilots. And we've already worked with lots of startups in Hong Kong and globally to start trying lots of new cutting edge technologies. And so kind of we continue to be on the lookout, right, for new solutions to our problems. And I'm sure there are many in the audience today who would have these kind of solutions that we would look into. So if you do, please reach out to me. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Dan. I think, are we out of time or do we have time for one more question? 1 minute. Let me get, so just 1 minute, because you were the CEO of an AIAR firm and you are very, you're very aware of the technology benefits as well as the challenges to privacy. And so, do you want to give us a word about what our audience should be thinking about potential, data overreach in the smart city environment?
Yeah, data privacy and protection is such a deep topic, and it's going to be very hard in a minute to kind of summarize this, right? But what I would say is this, to the extent that digital is now taking over the world in the way that, for example, Benson mentioned earlier, right? At the core of that is your usage of data. How do you collect it in a responsible way? How do you manage that, maintain it, and then get insight from that? And so clearly, that's a key point. I would maybe say this. Actually, it's useful to remember there are different types of data. And I think many people tend to focus on consumer-facing data, consumer behavior, things of that sort, where there's lots and lots of privacy concerns. But I think kind of where we're seeing a lot of benefit and value is actually in more of the operational data. So for example, we're spending a lot of time focusing on the sensors that we have in our trains, in our stations, everywhere. And we're using that to do all sorts of things, provide better travel, better user experience, lower our costs. And, I think kind of that's kind of the thing to be aware. And when you talk about kind of that operational data, I think there's always privacy concern, but the nature is quite different, right? And so it's very easy sometimes to over summarize. But I think there are different types and categories of data. Nature is different. And then the way that you manage the privacy is also quite different.
Thank you, Dan. I think we're just about out of time. I did want to save some time originally for the panelists to share some parting thoughts for the entrepreneurs in the audience, but I think you can come, and those of you here and physically come talk to our panelists after this session, and they'll be happy to share with you their thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We could give a big round of applause to our Smart City panel. And actually, we have a few gifts here that we'd like to present with you as well. Thank you. Pass a few. Thank you very much.
Thanks, bro.
Oh, sorry. We'll just pass it back here. Thank you. Dan, we have one for you as well, but we're probably going to have to wait until you're out of quarantine to pass it to you.
I'll come get it.
Yeah. I heard they don't allow people passing things to people in quarantine. So go ahead.
Great. Thank you.
Take a photograph together. Thank you. One more here. One more here. Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Dan.
Stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So while we're setting up for the next panel, which will be the healthcare panel, I'd like to also just give a quick set of thanks to one of our sponsors, Baker McKenzie, which will be moderating the next panel as well. Baker McKenzie is also a transactional powerhouse providing commercially focused end-to-end legal advice to help clients address legal issues and mitigate risks that could dilute the value of a company's innovation. They are widely recognized for their expertise in handling complex multi-jurisdictional transactions. They have a global and cross-disciplinary team to serve the full spectrum of the technology ecosystem, whether it be regulatory implications of adopting new technology or considerations of investing in technology companies. So I'm sure they are very well placed to help moderate this particular panel. We have Tracy Wood from Baker McKenzie, a partner at Baker McKenzie, who will be helping with this discussion today on investment themes in the biopharma and medtech space. So I'd like to invite Tracy and our healthcare panel up to the stage right now. So please give a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks, Foon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the healthcare panel. I'm Tracy Watt. I head up the M&A team at Baker McKenzie in Hong Kong, China. I'm very honored today to have a panel of very distinguished speakers with me. To my immediate left here, it's Simone Song, founder and senior partner of ORI Capital. And to the far left is Boson Hao. He's the managing director and co-head of private investments of Tyburn Capital. Joining us from Shanghai in quarantine is Alex Chafaronkov. I think Alex is a well-known figure in the healthcare sector here. He is founder and CEO of In Silico Medicine. So I actually would like each of our speakers to just do a very quick intro, about I think themselves briefly, and and about actually their firms, and organizations. So maybe starting with you, Simone.
Thank you, Tracy. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Simone Song. I'm the founder of Ori Capital and also a senior partner at Ori Healthcare Funds. Ori Healthcare Funds are VC funds focusing on investing innovative healthcare companies globally. And our disease focus are the large ones, cancer, acute chronic disease conditions, and also neurodegenerative related diseases. Our focus modality will be therapeutics, drug delivery, and diagnostics. And our investment strategy is to combine quantitative analysis with fundamental research. So by saying, that's why we call ourselves a quantamental manager, quantamental being the part that we have developed an in-house big data-driven AI research platform. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Simone. And Alex, is it okay? We'll start with you then next, before going to Boson. A quick intro.
Yes, sure. So my name is Alex. My name is Alex Javrankov, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called In Silico Medicine. So this company is a Hong Kong-based company. We're global. We focus on AI-powered drug discovery. So that's where we use computational approaches to identify new targets in a variety of diseases. We generate novel chemical matter, novel drugs with the desired properties, and we predict clinical trials outcomes. So recently we've managed to demonstrate that we can set new records in both biomarker development and target discovery and generation of small molecules, so going end to end. And to my knowledge, we are the first company on record to discover the new targets using AI, generate small molecules using AI, and take it all the way into IND-enabling studies. So we are very hopeful to go into humans sometime within the next very short foreseeable future.
Thanks. And lastly, Boson.
Yeah, sure. I'm Boson Hao. I'm a managing director with Tyburn Capital. We're a multi-sector strategy hedge fund that does growth equity investments in both public and private markets. Sectors we cover are healthcare, TMT, consumer, financials, some industrials. I wear two hats at the firm. I lead our private equity business. We started doing that about 3 years ago. We've raised two dedicated pools of capital to make growth equity investments, primarily in three of those verticals. It's healthcare, broadly all subsectors, enterprise SaaS, and also fintech. We do invest mostly in the region, mainly in Asia, but we do have an office in San Francisco, so we are global investors. Pleased to be here and excited to join the rest of the esteemed panelists here.
Thank you. So, I mean, and this question is directed actually to, the entire panel. I mean, COVID has transformed the industry. It creates a lot of opportunities for companies and investors to drive, healthcare through innovation. So, I'd like to hear from actually each, of the panelists, given that your different focus, are there specific, whether it's for pharmaceuticals, therapeutic classes, or medtech and services that, that you see investors are now chasing, And what do you think are the key trends, in the next 12 months or so? And if it's okay, maybe starting again with Simone first.
Okay, thank you. Hello. I think the most overwhelming impact technology-wise, healthcare technology-wise, we see is on RNA technologies. We're not just talking about mRNA technology, which is used to develop COVID vaccines. We're talking about all kinds of RNA technology. For example, the mRNA and circular RNA, they're both used to allow your body to in vivo develop genes, therefore translating to a wanted protein. So that's mRNA, circular RNA. And we also look at RNAi, which is interference RNA, and also silencing RNA and RNA siRNA. They're both used the other way around. They're both used to allow your body to in vivo disrupt a gene, disrupt an unwanted protein to be translated. And we also look at RNA editing technology, which can do both, which can allow or disallow. So that's the biggest impact following COVID, because RNA technology has been there for years and years, but it's being quickly brought in, it's quickly being unearthed with the success of COVID vaccine. In terms of what diseases that RNA therapeutics can treat, is quite large. It goes from cancer to chronic conditions, heart attack, strokes, and also a lot of rare diseases. And also we all see used to stop an epidemic. So when we talk about advancement made in RNA technology, we have to mention the leap forward in the DNA space, especially in DNA editing. We all heard about CRISPR-9, but now it has advanced very quickly from 9 to X to 3, basically allowing single base pair editing. One example, in the treatment of high cholesterol, we used to have to take tablets every day. But when PCSK9 gene is knocked out, one treatment can be done for life. That's the type of impact it has. So when we talk about RNA and DNA, we have to talk about gene therapy in general, which is mostly used to treat rare genetic disorders. Although rare, but can be very, very life-threatening, can be lethal. The big advancement, the big leap forward in this sector is to use non-viral delivery. Instead of using AAV, using lentivirus, now it's use lipid nanoparticle, the non-viral delivery method. So we move from gene therapy, we have to look at the more traditional ways to generate therapeutics, which is the protein way, monoclonal antibody, we all know. But now the leap forward is also happening in this field. We're not talking about the monoclonal antibodies, we're looking at biospecific or trial-specific, meaning an antibody that can recognize two antigens at the same time carrying a T cell or NK cell engager. So these are all big changes, but there are more. When we talk about a protein, we can also think about how to use virus, oncolytic virus, to treat cancer by jump-starting patients' own immune systems. So that's one of the pillars in the very important immuno-oncology approach to treat cancer. Now, when we talk about immuno-oncology, we have to talk about the CAR T therapy. Basically, given a T cell artificial receptors to go after the cancer cells, and it's very successful in liquid. Now it's moving to treat solid cancer. So all these are happening with AI, with AlphaFold that can predict 80% above or more protein 3D structuring. I think innovations in healthcare will surprise us all at a speed we haven't seen before. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bosun, what about you? What do you see?
Yeah, look, I share the sentiment that Simone just shared. I think in some ways we're probably in this third kind of golden age of biotech. If you thought small molecules was one, large, proteins, antibodies was second. But third, yeah, no, and look, it's cell. She mentioned cell therapy, gene editing. I mean, I think the ability to now target, identify with genetic sequencing, and the ability to deliver specifically and how to knock down genes or upregulate. It's fascinating, and we can now start to think about cures with gene therapy and even gene editing, when previously it was just treating the symptoms of disease and illness. But if I'll maybe shed on two things. I mean, we could probably just talk the entire panel about really new innovations and new technologies that are going to improve healthcare, because it's super exciting. I think one of the things I think we should think about too is if you look geographically. So I think Simone and I, and then Alex also as well, we operate on a global basis. And so when I think about healthcare as an opportunity, and what are the areas that can be addressed or fixed, or what can you create businesses out of that ultimately become investment opportunities for us, going into the US, which has a very different healthcare infrastructure, in some ways I think it's incredibly complex, probably inefficient in so many ways. The opportunities there could be very, very different, even on the drug side, medical device side, versus, let's say, here where we're sitting in Asia, because it's here there's a dearth of healthcare infrastructure, dearth of physicians, even basic illnesses aren't addressed here. So when we think about opportunities, you just kind of have to think about it in the context of the geography. Usually, if I'm looking at the US, I tend to over-index on some of these highly, highly innovative, drug therapies that Simone was talking about. But even just in this region, the ability to deliver even basic, pediatric care in Southeast Asia could be very, very intriguing. Or leveraging, telemedicine or digital health in a way that, when you're speaking to a patient, let's say in a rural community, which doesn't have access, in mainland China, can't get to the tier 1, 2, 3 hospital, their only option is maybe to access care through a digital platform for their child that's sick at 2 a.m. That's a very, very high utility, probably, service that could be provided. The last thing I'll just mention, so again, I think thinking about the geography and the opportunity set and the utility or the clinical needs that exist, I think is really important. What I'll say next is actually providing a little bit of a segue to Alex, but I think the confluence of healthcare and technology is really going to be driving the next, I don't know how many decades of innovation. And Alex will be talking about, AI drug discovery, and he focuses across all those modalities we talked about, but he's looking at small molecules that have been around for decades, has the ability to do others, but introducing technology to that, a medium, a chemistry that's been around for decades, 100 years, and we now can interrogate and access or identify new receptors or new uses of molecules that we've known for decades, active ingredients. Fascinating, because we don't have to recreate the wheel then. We can take what we've already known. In some instances, we're creating new things, but in some instances, we can say, look, this existing compound that we know works for one disease, or maybe it failed in a clinical trial previously. There are ways to look at it with different angles using big data, right? And now enhanced computing power, and I won't get into the jargon about it, but it's fascinating. But even things, so that's AI drug discovery. Alex will talk about it, but there's also things like AI diagnostics. We spend a time looking, at things where just the vast amount of information that's being created, let's say through imaging, and the ability to apply machine learning to that and artificial intelligence, speaks to, look, can you start to capture what ultimately is pattern recognition that, let's say, a radiologist or a pathologist develops over many, many decades of looking at these scans and being able to identify and say, well, this is a cancer, this is the beginning of a cancer, it's an illness. But you know what, machines actually in theory could do that better. And so this is really interesting on how we can start to think about how technology will start to separate and think about, look, in the event that machines can do something better, it frees up time where human capital and insight can be applied to other problems, other issues where at the end of the day a machine can't do it, but you need that human insight and intuition and critical thinking and problem solving. And that's really exciting to me, because now humans can focus on what we can do best, and we can leave the methodical pattern recognition stuff to AI and machines. So I mean, that's just a snapshot of really exciting stuff that's happening, and I've only this is a fraction of the surface.
Yeah, and in fact, I think almost in not just healthcare, but almost in every industry, the theme of convergence, technology, in the sector, it's just prevalent. Actually, maybe over to Alex. Tell us a bit more how I think I expect you to be talking about AI, and technology, how it is driving your growth. So over to you, Alex, please.
So, of course, I would like to resonate with the previous speakers, with Boston and Tracy, So I think that COVID dramatically transformed our industry beyond recognition, primarily because it also brought the attention to the sector. And there are many more people now who are switching careers even from IT into biomedicine, just because they now believe that this is a worthy cause. And of course, this pandemic also brought the speed and the financing to companies in our sector in AI-powered drug discovery. So pretty much every company which was around at the time when pandemic started switched into COVID-based programs, and actually in many areas progressed. So both the investor community and the regulators and the employees recognized that what this segment of the industry was doing was the right thing to do. I don't want to speak specifically about Insilico, but just talk about the industry in general. But it basically elevated the many companies in this field to the place where that they deserved. Internally, if you look at how AI-powered companies invest in COVID-related projects, they primarily go after either the very well-known protein targets within COVID, right? So many of those targets are known. So if you know how to drug them, you can advance the molecules to the clinic pretty quickly. And one of those targets is C3-like protease, is the protein which is responsible for viral replication. So multiple groups, including ours, started working on C3-like protease very early, and now are in advanced stages of preclinical work, because it still takes a lot of time to do in vivo testing and prepare the molecules for human IND. And it really increased the attention on multiple other viral proteins that are addressable with small molecules, like spike protein and many others. Another approach is to improve the human immune response and modulate human immune response. So you're looking for specific targets that could be modulated using also primarily small molecules in order to improve the immune response and reduce the cytokine storm and also modulate the immune system into the right direction, so to improve the survival rates of the patients. Another area which got highlighted is aging. So I am deeply passionate about aging research myself. I actually don't care about any other forms of biology. I'm very interested in those longitudinal changes that transpire during our lifetime that technically degrade us and lead to death and many diseases. And COVID was one of the main drivers for people to understand that aging plays a huge part in survival of COVID patients. So if you look at the infection rates, at the survival rates, at mortality rates, kids do not really get COVID and they survive. They do not even go to the hospitals. But people over 65, the older they get, the worse the prognosis. So you get very low survival rates in people over 80. So that is due to immune senescence. And if you identify ways to improve the immune system and reverse some of the age-associated changes, that would not only help the COVID patients, but also would help the society as a whole, because we definitely need to figure out how to improve healthy, productive longevity and compress morbidity. So those are grand challenges, and those grand challenges were highlighted. Those grand challenges are being addressed by the many companies, including ours. And the level of investment in this field has increased. Again, many new people are coming into the field, and many university professors started multiple small startups that now are gaining prominence because they have addressed some small critical technology that people needed, but that were overlooked. And we are, looking to collaborate with those. Sometimes even thinking about doing something bigger. And I think that the entire industry has benefited from this pandemic. Also, remote work. So companies that are truly global and have distributed infrastructure, distributed human resources, actually benefited because now they've started working much more efficiently. And you've got new ways to coordinate labor force. You have new ways to collaborate. You have new ways to accelerate research in pretty much unprecedented ways. So I think that this industry has seen nothing yet. So we are going to see major growth going forward. What is unfortunate is that, again, none of those companies and none of the biotechnology or pharma companies have demonstrated the ability to go after a cure for COVID rapidly. So it's been 2 years into the pandemic, and there is no drug that is effectively treating the disease. So that shows you the inefficiency of our industry and shows you that there is a lot to be done.
Alex, turning to a different topic. I mean, this morning, I understand, a group, of aspiring, entrepreneurs were, competing, for a prize. And I actually want the panelists here to tell us actually, what would be the tips actually, like you would give, to aspiring biotech, healthcare, life sciences, entrepreneurs, or would be entrepreneurs here. I actually like to start with Alex. Alex, you have a lot of international experience, but you have chosen Hong Kong, to be headquarters of in Silico. Actually, why Hong Kong? Can you share that with the audience?
Well, sure. Well, first of all, I love China. So I think that the future of the biomedical sciences and the pharmaceutical industry is in this region, primarily because it resembles the early 2000s in information technology. You've got a lot of contract research organizations that can very rapidly, very quickly perform the experiments that we need to be able to validate the AI. So you've probably heard about those phrases, designed in California, made in China in early 2000s, and all the companies who followed that approach actually benefited, grew, and accelerated dramatically. So now with the growth of the China's biotechnology industry, and specifically the CROs, you can now operate at supersonic speed. You can do multiple experiments in parallel. You can do very complex experiments, and the quality of the labor now in China is beyond any imagination. So we've got really amazing scientists who can do high quality work. And the next step is innovative biotechnology. So with the government's focus on innovation, on delivering innovative drugs, and also suppressing the margins on generics and drugs that have low level of innovation. It really drives the pharmaceutical companies towards innovation. And Hong Kong is a very special region of China, which allows people like me who do not really speak Chinese to feel at home. And it's great international city, great financial hub. It's starting to think about building the biotechnology ecosystem, and it's just a great place to live. So I think that I surveyed 7 different regions and cities where I wanted to live myself, and Hong Kong came on the top, just because it's such a small, beautiful place where you can hike on the same day and do a lot of business on the same day, especially for in an extremely busy entrepreneur's life. That compact ecosystem where you can do everything in one day is truly amazing. It's right next door to mainland, which is currently the big driver of biomedical innovation. Of course, we do have a very substantial site in Shanghai, and we love every region of China. So we also have a site in Taipei, and that's why I am in quarantine here, because next 2 months I'll be spending in Shanghai. And once the border is open up, Hong Kong allows you to go to Shenzhen in 7 minutes by train. So it's in right proximity to mainland, and it's a huge transportation hub. You can also go to the UK or New York very easily. It's great airport, great transportation ecosystem, and lots of friendly, good talent.
Thanks. And someone who's born and raised here, and really proud to hear that. Thanks, Alex. And turning, now to Simone and Boson, and from an investor, point of view, what tips actually can you give, to companies, biotech or medtech, companies that are looking for funding? What actually will make them attractive, to investors like yourself? Simone, is that okay, starting with you?
Sure. So as an investor, I receive proposals all the time. I think my first piece of advice is to understand how much time I have for each proposal. So it has to be right on the point. Don't waste pages of introductions of how the corporate development is. That will cause the proposal to go to the trash. So share my passion. If you want to send something to me, check me out on my website. So the mission of Ori Healthcare Fund is to be financially successful and to be socially impactful. So we focus on three very large diseases. If there's a fit, then start your proposal by telling me what is the unmet need you have discovered. Number one, talk about something meaningful. What is the unmet need, big or small? Secondly, what you can do to bridge the need, to bridge the gap. Then talk about, executions. So very simple. That's the logic flow I want to see. That basically tells me what your mission is. So in healthcare, it has to be save people's lives. So that's the number one tip I have. The number two tip I have is also, because I'm speaking to an audience of people who live in Hong Kong. I consider myself a Hong Konger as well. I started living in Hong Kong in 1995. So when I'm offshore, when I'm in London or in China or in wherever I am, I don't miss Shanghainese food. I was born and raised in Shanghai. I would miss wanton mee, ngao lan mee. So I'm a Hong Konger. So I want my second tip to be addressed to people who want to create a difference sitting in Hong Kong in healthcare. Now, technologies don't become products automatically. It takes discovery and takes translation. So a clinical development. If you start early, if you start with discovery, when you do discovery, you have to bear in mind that this is not a science. You're not a bench scientist. You are discovering something for the purpose of taking it into human. So you need to prepare yourself ready for the transformation to become, a lab scientist to a discovery scientist. And that's number 2 tips. And Hong Kong, we have so many great schools, and you look at the resume of the faculties, these are all Ivy League in the case of their ex-career in the US or Europe. So I do believe there are enough technologies that can be discovered and can be translated later on. But the first step is to discover. When you discover for the purpose of for a regulatory approval down the road. When you have this mindset, it's much easier to talk to a venture capitalist. It only takes one Alibaba and one Tencent to create 2 gigantic industries. And I think it would take a few Alex to start the drug discovery sector. And it take one leaguer to come up with a CDMO, right? So it would take probably a few Alex in Hong Kong and maybe a few Simone to start doing something new. That's my number 2 tips. Number 3 is being in Hong Kong, all the advantages are there. We have very fertile land for technology to be discovered and later to be translated. I'm sure I have no problem in recruiting talents in Hong Kong. We have, even our head of legal has a PhD from Yuan Guoyong, Professor Yuan Guoyong. And we have former PhDs who are very specialized in certain scientific approaches to treat cancer or neurodegeneratives. We have no problem in recruiting talents. So should you. So shouldn't you have any difficulties. But aside from that, we plug deeply both globally and into China. China has gone from supplying inexpensive labor to very, very skillful young scientists and engineers. If you look at our field, look at the healthcare field, just this year, starting from last year, in fact, August last year, just within August last year and this year, landmark deals are being created, and the trend is being recognized that global farmers, large, medium, small, are knocking on the doors of Chinese innovative pharma for early stage assets to be out-licensed for their global ex-China rights. For example, Beijing just concluded a deal with a large pharma with upfront payment of 650 million. And IMAB, a small, young, not mean, when I say young, not being disrespectful, being young in terms of age and very innovative, concluded a deal with AbbVie with an upfront of 180 million. And one of the largest specs globally this year is called a young company, only 3 years old, incorporated in the US, called EQRX. This company has created our industry's biggest spec, $1.2 billion. What is the business model? In licensing approved chemical oncology drug from Hansen. The lady boss was the wife of Han Rui, of course. You can see the trend is being recognized that China is not only, being in Hong Kong, you have all the advantage I said earlier. You have early technology to be discovered, to be translated. By plugging to China, it could speed up the discovery and the development process. So whether you can see how many head of the research centers established in Zhangjiang, but not only in Zhangjiang, elsewhere as well. And even with COVID, the Zoom is there, team is there. Learn to be international by being Hong Kong, by being part of China, and looking into the globe.
Thanks. Actually, picking up the point about being global, and both of you touch briefly upon that point as well. That healthcare is actually a global business. So maybe in particular on that point, any I think tips and maybe even success stories like among your portfolio companies that you can share.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm glad Simone mentioned EQRX. We were early private investors in that company. So, look, I think the tips that I have, I do want to reiterate, I think Simone's first question about or answer is just, look, understand the unmet need or product market fit. What are you doing to solve it? Why are you best positioned to do it? And the money that we're giving you, you're raising, like, what is that going to accomplish? What are the use of proceeds? And why are you the best team for us to back? Second would be, look, be ready to be discouraged because it can be a long process, and you're going to get a lot of no's. That's just the nature of this business. But realize that you just need to, in many cases, find one or two investors that believe in you, and that's how you get a start. But there's going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be a lot of discouraging conversations along the way. There's going to be a lot of these frustrations. You'll leave a meeting saying, look, that person had no idea, doesn't understand. And you're actually probably right, because at the end of the day, the chances are many of your businesses, you're the smartest person in the room that knows the best about your business. The person on the other side, even if he or she claims she's an expert, chances are they're more generalists than they really are expert. There's some exceptions to that. So just make sure you just need one or two investors to believe in you, and that's how you get your start. Along the lines of what you were saying, Tracy, I think this goes along the lines of like leveraging resources globally. There's no need to recreate the wheel. Oftentimes we encounter, especially in healthcare, but I see this across all the sectors I invest in, this kind of pride of authorship, ownership. We've got to create it in-house because that's the best way to do it. But I think if you change your mindset and think about your business model should be, how do we get there the fastest? How do we leverage the expertise of others, the community, the network, to help us get us there sooner? That's going to be more highly valued. In this day and age where things move so quickly because of technology, first mover advantage, getting to market, even with candidly, a suboptimal product, suboptimal service, it pays dividends. And because you're there first, you get the recognition, you're recognized as a leader, and you can iterate from there. You don't have to be perfect that first time out. Every business is iterative. Every entrepreneur would tell you that. But on global, so look, specifically going back to healthcare and biotech, I mean, one of the investments that we made in our portfolio, kind of the first investments we did was, if you think about especially drug development, biotechnology, look, everyone's seen, unless you've been under a rock lately, a lot of the regulatory challenges that have come up, particularly within China. I won't go into the reasons and rationale, politics or whatever, why that's happening. But what I do think is, of all the sectors, and I look at not just healthcare, but I look at a multitude of ones, healthcare on balance is probably the most, I think, protected and still area amongst all the categories, simply because it is truly global. And look, innovation in healthcare drug development comes from every region. And look, today as it stands, and I agree with Simone's comment, that there's going to be best-in-class, first-in-class innovation that is coming out of China now, and it will start to increase. However, no geography, whether it's the US, China, Europe, is going to be solving all of the issues and illnesses that humanity faces. So the reality of it is, it has to be global, because that person who's solving non-small cell lung cancer could be residing in the US, but in China they could be solving psoriasis, and in Europe it could be solving some other inflammatory disease. And what that means, though, is it means there has to be global collaboration. So one of the investment themes that we're doing at Tyborn is, because we have strong relationships that exist both in the West and now in Asia, we're trying to find how we can assist that collaboration, whether it's east going west, west going east. And so Simone mentioned EQRX. That was a business which is on the forefront of taking technology from China and moving it to the West. They're probably one of the first to have done it, along with some other multinationals. But the other trend, and probably more prevalent, is actually taking technology, licensing China rights, and bringing those assets into China for development. And it's not just for accessing the market. People think about China as a market opportunity, but you have to think in many cases the market opportunity, because of the regulatory timelines, can take very, very long. So it may be 5, 6, 7 years before you see that first dollar of sales in China. But what a US company or a European company may be very interested in doing in China is accessing capital, but accessing patients, and maybe exploring new indications like cancers that are more prevalent in China. And what does that mean for the global development program of, let's say, this US-based company? It allows them to get to market faster. What did I say earlier? Think about your business model and how you can get to market the fastest. Getting to market first, 12 months sooner, 18 months sooner, in a drug category. If you do the net present value of that for a multi-billion-dollar drug, it's a major value creator for that company. So we've done that, and a lot of our companies that we're exploring.
Thank you both. And I have more questions, but unfortunately, we're running out of time. I'd like to thank, my panelists, Alex, Simone, and Bosen, for an insightful comments. Thanks, all for attending this, panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. If you could just stay here for a quick second, we have some souvenirs that we'd like to present. Thank you so much. Tracy, and a quick photo op. We put the screen back on. With Alex as well. Alex, we have one for you too, but we'll FedEx to you once you're out of quarantine.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, one more, I think.
Really?
Yeah. It's the Cyber Report special. Can't leave it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks again, Simone. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, go ahead. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. So we've come to our final panel of the day. So we've had a panel on smart cities, which told us where we're going to live. We had a panel on healthcare, which told us what that quality of life might look like. Now we have something that's slightly different, a panel on social impact investing that might maybe tell us a little bit about the why of what we will need to do in the future. So it's my pleasure to introduce Philo Alto from Asia Value Partners, founder and CEO of Asia Value Partners Advisors, who will be moderating this discussion with Eric Ng and Annie Chen. So, please.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. And this is the third session for this afternoon on the Impact Panel. My name is Philo Alto, and I'm the founder of Asia Value Advisors. I'll be moderating today's session in conversation with my fellow panelists, Ms. Annie Chen, Chair of RS Group, and Mr. Eric Ng, CEO of Happiness Capital. Thank you for joining us today. To get things started, I'd like to focus on 4 themes from this morning's session and bridge it to our session today. And as you know, it's a full day of jam-packed session. And because it is our second time doing this ATEC forum, this is actually an offshoot of 2 other business school, startup competition over the past few years. And from that synthesis, I have observed a few themes. The first one is the following. The topic of social impact investing has seemed to have come around full circle. And by this, when the startup competition started, which I have observed with the HBS of 5-6 years ago, there was a separate panel between the startup session competition as well as the social impact competition. So even the criteria are quite different, and even the metrics by which the impact participants are evaluated on. There's some sort of a kid's gloves evaluation for the impact startups relative to the traditional startups. But fast forward to today, the metrics and the questions that the judges were asking the participants, they are all very similar. And the intentionality of understanding what is the unmet need and how to tackle them through their business model is there. And all of those are framed towards how they do it sustainably within the context of today's environment. So that has come to full circle. We don't even have a separate category. Second observation is that the need for self-labeling, that one is a social entrepreneur, that one is trying to create impact, is no longer as prevalent compared to before. And you will see from the results that as they scale their business model, their impacts are also being scaled, whether addressed and tackling one or more of the sustainable development goals. So that in itself is very interesting. That was not there before. And the third one is many of these startups, obviously we're in ATEC, have been using technology and the role of the ecosystem in scaling their solutions, in their scaling their businesses as it relates to tackling a problem point or pain point of their business, of the problem. That in itself is also the interconnectedness of the two is becoming more pronounced. So it's actually a good way to link with the discussion and the panelists that we have today as well. And the last but not least is the talent aspect of things. Many of the entrepreneurs who presented today, they have come also from other backgrounds, either private sector, as a banker, as a consultant, or what have you, and they are doing different things that is more in line with their current life stage, and also their passion to address issues that have sustainability as such. So those are the 4 themes, and I would like to lead that on to our session today, where we have Ms. Annie Chen and Mr. Eric Ng, who will be presenting their own angle as to how they look into the space. And I've asked each of them to share their respective journey and views on the topic. And so I'll start first with Annie. I think there's some slides that she will be presenting, who will share her journey, and then afterwards we'll pass it on to Eric. With that, I'll pass it on to Annie for her initial comments. Annie?
Thanks, Philo, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me today. I think what I would do in the next few minutes is talk a little bit about my journey to becoming an impact investor. For folks who have heard this all before, I apologize, but I thought it would be good to kind of have a bit of a broader scene setting from an investor point of view. So you see that we operate under the brand RS Group. So RS Group is a family office that I created in 2009 to manage my personal assets. However, having experienced the 2008 financial meltdown, I felt that the traditional way of investing was problematic. And I increasingly saw the connection between kind of a blind pursuit of profits and economic growth and the many crises that the world faces, like climate change, environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, not to mention something that is very close to home here, the widening wealth gap. and also the pressure that our overconsumption puts on the natural world. And I think, that was, a bit of a cause behind the whole COVID pandemic as well. So in 2008, I really wanted to find a way to invest our capital more responsibly and more impactfully. Our approach is underpinned by the concept of blended value. This is a framing that was first articulated by a gentleman named Jed Emerson, who is a thought leader in the field of impact investing. And coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, Jed is also an advisor to Eric's group, I believe. So blended value, this whole concept, what does it tell us? It tells us that investments generate not only financial value, but also environmental and social value. In other words, every investment actually has impact. The question is what the impact is and whether it is net positive or negative across these various domains. And once I realized this, I think, then as an investor, I want to link my values and become a conscious investor in every investment that I make. We also consider actually the use of philanthropic capital or grant making to be a form of capital deployment, albeit one that is all about impact generation with no expectation of any return of financial capital. And we call this aggregation, a combination of both the investment side and the philanthropic side as a total portfolio management approach, where we make sure that both these activities are aligned towards the same mission goals. When we started, actually, it was quite difficult to find the investment products that fit our requirements. We're talking about a decade ago. I remember going to banks and they had no idea what I was talking about. But fortunately today, there's not only wider recognition and acceptance that asset owners should consider risk, return, and impact when investing. There is actually a much broader spectrum of investment possibilities for asset owners like us who want to integrate sustainability and impact considerations into our investments. Moving to what we're doing now. So in the last few years, climate change has become a big topic in finance. And it is also something that we at RS Group care deeply about. In fact, for quite a number of years, we've been trying to integrate climate change considerations into our portfolio. So already in 2013, we divested from fossil fuel investments. Back then, a lot of people challenged us for taking that step. But you can see even the Harvard Endowment, I think, recently made that decision to divest. And more recently, we have increased our efforts to understand both the carbon footprint in our portfolio, as well as the extent to which our investments align with the Paris Agreement of 1.5 degree goal. On the grant-making side, we have been longtime supporters of a number of environmental NGOs in Hong Kong that work on issues that intersect with climate change issues as well. But realizing that climate change is a very urgent issue and that time is not on our side, and also to achieve deeper and more focused impact, we decided to dedicate a portion of our resources to climate change proper, with a strategic focus on natural capital preservation in Asia. And we call this the Natural Capital Initiative. Just very quickly, our research led us to focus on supporting nature-based solutions and using blended finance structures. I know this is a tech conference, but I think that we would all agree that we do depend on nature to survive, and so that's why we wanted to go there. And in fact, there's a very huge link between nature and economic benefits as well. And why blended finance? Because very few natural capital projects can actually meet the risk and return requirements of institutional capital. Whereas if you can design a good blended finance structure, which uses a mix of market and concessionary or philanthropic capital, we can make such projects much more attractive to private capital and thus help these projects to achieve scale. Now, with an over $800 billion funding gap for nature-based solutions a year, scale is everything. So I'll just end by saying that, as a family office, we have very flexible use of our capital. So within this pool that we've dedicated to our natural capital initiative, we will deploy the capital both in terms of grants. For example, we gave money to a group called Convergence to provide design funding grants to groups that are trying to come up with these blended finance structures. We are in the middle of planning to build our own nature venture builder, which we will invest in ourselves, hopefully, and also probably through this invest in the underlying ventures as well. And then finally, we also want to address the talent issue because even though nature-based solution has a big need and a big gap in Asia, finding that combination of talent where they have both the financial know-how as well as that passion and knowledge about the environment is very difficult to come by. So we anticipate having to support that maybe through some grants and sponsorship. So I hope this gives you a bit of a broad picture of who we are, what we do, and maybe that'll go somewhat towards setting the scene for what Eric has to tell us.
Thank you, Annie. And before I pass it on to Eric, I'd like to ask one or two follow-on questions to Annie. In the two current initiatives that you have, one is a nature venture initiative, the other one is a nurturing talent. Many linking it to this morning's competition, many of the entrepreneurs, they feel very strongly that the issues that they're trying to solve for their customers, many of them are, big and challenging and audacious, but they also know how to pick their spots. They also realize that sustainability as it relates to finding meaning and purpose to their work, they're also learning from different sectors. One thing as it relates to the nurturing talent, you may want to, could you share a bit more about the NGO spin-off that you had, which is the SFI, Sustainable Finance Initiative, in the sense that there are talents who want to understand what is the context of what they want to do, whether they would want to be an entrepreneur or whether they work for big companies. Why is it that the support of through SFI, you're able to provide the mindset shift for people to realize why sustainability is important? The thought process, how that started.
So for those of you who don't know, SFI, or the Sustainable Finance Initiative, is something that we incubated a few years ago, and it's working on developing and supporting a community of impact investors in Hong Kong who are wanting to or starting to deploy capital in impact. I think talent is particularly a challenge in Hong Kong because of the high costs of living, right? Yes. So I think, this is also a conversation that goes back years, when you were also, trying to address this need of, people who are still maybe in the early stages of their career, but wanting to pivot, but there isn't an easy way for them to find, a suitable role. It's not surprising that a lot of people have ended up becoming entrepreneurs, with the interest in the startup space. But that's not a path for everyone, just because how difficult it is. And so such a high failure rate. And what SFI is hoping to contribute by working with other groups is to help do its part in nurturing talent. So they've done a fellowship scheme, for example, to help people who want to pivot get familiar with the space. Because the space is also quite broad. It ranges from supporting social enterprises to, doing maybe blended finance structuring, right? So depending on your personal skill sets and where you aspire to be, But at the end of the day, I think, it's also timing as well. If the market is not ready, it's just all that much more challenging for people who want to make the shift. But we're starting to see some changes though there. So and I think, as you said, this conference and this competition, I think, the idea of people starting businesses not just for the sake of starting a business, but to consider, what gap are they meeting, and what needs are they meeting, what impact do they have, is very much a given. And the question is, are you able to convince investors to see it your way as well?
And along those lines, they also work with private investors. Many of them are next generation who are looking at ways by which they bring in their skills, talents, and resources to deploy towards addressing intractable, whether social and environmental issues. So I think those are the two-legged aspects there. Let's shift gears a bit and turn it on to Eric. Eric has some slides that he would like to share. And here, some of his perspectives will directly have concrete examples that you could look at that touches on one or more of these social and environmental themes. Eric, you.
Great. Slide, please. So we are Happiness Capital. We empower entrepreneurs to co-create a happier world with us. And we are part of the Lee Group. We started 5 years ago, but we invest independently from the core businesses. So our main goal is to create happiness. Of course, food can also create happiness, health, and other stuff as well, like climate change. And we're not a fund, so we're evergreen. So we don't push founders to rush to exit, which is sometimes very important in impact investment because it might take a longer time to actually to harvest the result. And here you go. And before I explain how we do impact investment, maybe we look at an example from our portfolio companies. It's called Redefine Meat in Israel. We led the $29 million Series A last year, and we're just closing at around at least like 8 times the pre-money valuation. And what they created is a different animal that produces the delicious piece of meat that you see in front of you, but it's all plant-based. It has the same flavor, taste, texture, fat marbling, and the sizzling cooking experience that you would expect with real meat. In fact, I'm actually going to a tasting event after this. It's the very first in Asia. So we invited a few people to come and to taste, to see the blind tasting, see like real meat and the redefined meat. And you can see this, they created a 3D printer that can actually print plant-based whole muscle gut steak right out there. And each printer can replace 1,000 cows every year. So as you know, cows actually releases the most of the methane gases. And the United Nations latest report said methane gases actually is more serious than CO2 to us in the environment. And you can see the juiciness. It's actually it when you bite, you just simply like, oh, it's real meat. So what they started, they didn't want to just start a new meat company. Their mission actually was to save the environment and to save the planet. And the 3D printing of plant-based meat is just the beginning of the whole journey. It could apply to any other stuff that we eat, like pork and chicken and other stuff. And eventually they can apply the same technology to other fields that can help to save the planet. So let's take a look at the video that they produced. This is how they actually perceive the impact that they're creating with this 3D printing technology.
One 3D printer by
Right. So you see how impactful it is just with one 3D printer. It's basically the entire pollution from Israel for a whole year. And they're actually producing hundreds of these and rolling out to Europe in the next 2 months and in the US next year. And I'll bring them to Asia next year, maybe year after too. And so one machine can replace 1,000 cows, and you can take your math, 1,000 machines can replace so many cows, and hopefully we can still enjoy food, meat, without the sacrifice of our environment. Okay, so that's a typical example of our portfolio companies that fall into food, health, and climate change. So because it's more healthy meat, and it's actually securing the food supply, and it's helping the environment, so tackling climate change. And we also invest in the areas of trust and reduce inequalities, such as we have farmers platform in Africa and India with over 10 million farmers actually using our platforms to help improve their quality of life. And how we did it is we have actually built up a portfolio of more than 55 direct investments and 16 funds in our portfolio. How we did it was we actually seeded or supported 16 VCs around the world in 8 hubs, and each of them actually help us to source the best local deals, and also help us to do expert due diligence because we're not good at everything that we invest. And they form a truly global happiness community. They kind of help each other and help all the portfolio companies in the happiness community to nurture them and to collaborate, because everything is now global. So we need actually global talents to actually work on all these like impactful projects. And now you ask me like, how do we actually make decisions what to invest and if we're actually getting happiness out from our investment. So in our KPI, both financial returns and happiness return are equally important. And in fact, our compensation and reward are also based on both happiness return and financial return. And so far, our financial returns been doing pretty well. All our exits are over 130% IRR, and now it's time to actually look at happiness return. I still remember, like about 2 years ago, I was in this stage and at the event. We're talking about how do we measure happiness. At that time, we were very simple, and now we have a methodology that we actually just created, what we call the happiness return metrics. And I'll look at the metrics later, but actually we co-create this metrics together with our portfolio companies and 3 experts on social impact measurements in the US. So these companies have been helping a lot of large PE firms to measure social impact with their fund investments. And we also work with our portfolio companies, say, how do you want to measure the impacts that you're creating? Because they are all our big family. So we're not creating a methodology just to say, hey, you follow us, but we actually create a methodology that everyone likes, everyone wants to use. And we apply them in every stage of our investment stages, but in particular, we want to keep tracking to make sure that they don't have any impact washing when doing the expansion. As you know, when you expand your business, shareholders and customers may give you pressure to change course. And that is the nightmare of impact investor, because like you started to support a good mission, and then during the next 5 years, the company, because of revenue, they change course and try to do something evil, and that's not what we want. So we keep tracking them, and because later down the road, they might still do fundraising, and we can actually influence the investors. Say, oh, this company is good, this company is actually off track. So this is what we've been doing with our companies. And we also provide insights through all these surveys to help them to identify what can be improved for their stakeholders. Stakeholders could be their customers, their employees, the community, the planet, the government. So it depends what they're doing. And as same as in any thesis, we also have like a blended value concept, but what we call an integrated return. So we combine both happiness return and financial return together and form one single number that we can look at easily. And this is a typical dashboard that we create for each of the portfolio companies. We look at the condition and experience for each happiness for each of the stakeholders. And then we'll actually summarize in a chart in front of you, so that we can easily look at each of the portfolio companies. And these data actually through qualitative survey, phone interviews, as well as a deep understanding of the business model and technology. And then we aggregate all the data and form a portfolio dashboard. And the dashboard can actually help us have a snapshot of a portfolio, how well it is doing in terms of like happiness creation all over the world, and give our investor also a good sense of like how much happiness we're creating and where we're creating. And this is in a nutshell how we are actually identifying opportunities, make our investment decisions, and how to actually measure both financial and happiness return during the entire course of the investment.
Thank you, Eric. It's very impressive how the Redefine Meet started first with a specific, clear, broad macro issue, which is the environmental challenges. And there are many metrics along those lines, such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals on that front. And from that point, they're able to create a business model around that. I'm just curious, as it relates to all the, I guess, proposals that you have been receiving, how has the conversation changed since the time you first started looking into this? And in terms of the potential investees, are they now seeing this as a more integrated conversation, or is it still more like, okay, what does investor want to hear, and how do I address it? What's your view?
Actually, we move very fast. Sometimes our decision making could be like within minutes. Because sometimes you have to grab very good deals around the world, and time zone difference, and also the competition. In particular, actually during COVID and after COVID, the competition of deals has been like increasing. But one thing that we always focus is like why you do it. Like, so what is your mission? And why do you do it is important, because when you drill down into the why, then you actually know whether this person is really wanted to make an impact. Sometimes they just want to create a startup for startup's sake, and they use impact to kind of like package it, but they are not really in the deep heart. They want to do something to for the planet, for mankind. So we actually look at it very seriously, and then, because business model and technology is always evolve. If they have a good team of people, which is all-rounded with the good business people, technology people, and scientists, they can usually crack the problem with our help and with our partners' help. But if they don't have a mission-oriented or mission-driven kind of mindset, they might give up easily, or they might actually change course to become evil. So in our mind, we are very particular when we drill down into the mission and the why, and then we look at the technology, and also whether they have a advantage, or comparing to other competitors, maybe another 5 years or 10 years competitive advantage ahead. And this is how we actually evaluate deals. And sometimes we jump into deals very quickly.
Got it. Now, maybe to the extent that you were able to watch this morning's sessions, is there, maybe it's a question to both Annie and Eric as well, to what extent any of the competitors who presented this morning, any one of them that resonated in relation to the work that you do? Maybe I'll start first with Eric.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the investment areas that we focus, two of the companies this morning actually focus on food, right? Avant and Juro. And we have cell culture companies like Blue Nalu in our pocket in San Diego, and they're actually doing similar things with Avant. And Juro is we actually exited Beyond Meat some time ago, and they're actually doing the plant-based minced pork. And also two companies on health, and Lifespans and Genip. And in fact, we also have a company that focuses on a microbiome. because this is the new trend. If you can tackle microbiome, you can actually probably solve a lot of diseases that cannot be cured today. Particularly, we have a company in San Francisco that can help infertile women to become fertile again or become pregnant very easily through adjustment of the microbiome in the gut. Because the microbiome in the gut can actually influence the fertility rate because they're just next door neighbors. And also the medical device space is what we also invest. We have a company called Inside Tech in Israel. They actually provide non-invasive ultrasound therapy to cure Parkinson's disease completely without opening your brain. So this morning, I think some of the companies fit very well into our radar screen, and in fact, we might actually have some follow-on talk with them. We already actually talked to them, a couple of them, some time ago, and we're tracking their development. And some other companies like the insurance tech companies, Pickupp, and also the OneDegree. We also have insurance tech companies like Lemonade in the pocket, and this is a new area because a lot of new consumers they don't really like the old insurance model, and because the environment has changed, the way we work has changed, the way we live has changed. So the insurance model should also evolve alongside with our lifestyle change as well. So we support that kind of themes very much.
Thank you. From Annie's perspective, as it relates to, for example, Nature Venture Initiative, what do you think are the touch points as it relates to the venture to the startups who may have business models that touches on the impact on the environment? So for them, why would they? What's the touch point? So why would they care about the initiative? Because the ecosystem support is super critical that enables different stakeholders to eventually do their thing and scale their business model as it relates to that. But for purpose of ATEC, how does the work of the Nature Venture Initiative translate to the investors for the startup? What's your initial view?
So I might explain it this way. Well, first of all, I have to say, we don't do a lot of direct investing. We don't have the scale or the team to do it. But in the context of the Natural Capital Initiative, for example, our focus is less on the actual, picking, the promising projects to invest in, but more we do it in the with the intention to help build the field, right? Because we know that there's a huge gap in terms of investing in nature. It does sound a little bit like an oxymoron, doesn't it? But we do need to kind of like use the market to direct more resources to help protect nature. But in Asia, we find that there are a number of gaps. There's a shortage of pipeline. There's a shortage of these ventures, that actually can grow in scale. And then thirdly, it's the talent piece that I mentioned. And so within the Natural Capital Initiative, we're trying to address these gaps, not so much that, because, we want to find the projects to invest in, but so that we can help grow the market so that additional capital can come in. So it's more with that catalytic mindset that we designed the Natural Capital Initiative.
Thank you, Annie. And that also segs into the reason why we're having this panel in the first place, and the impact panel, because as you can see, there are impact that can be accrued by direct company and the organization or business model intervention. There are also impact that can accrue to the ecosystem. In the case of the Natural Capital Initiative that Annie has, it is the ecosystem building that enables the different players to facilitate certain business models that would otherwise not be possible as of yet today. So maybe in 5-10 years, there will be newer startups that will be enabled, and that'll be catalyzed going forward. So this is like an ongoing development at this point, and ATEC is one platform that will be having competitors this year, which may be very different in the next 5 or 10 years. So every different player has their own space to play. One more question before we ask Eric and Annie for their closing words is the concept of impact. We now have the impact space becoming more and more sophisticated, and now we have moved from first defining impact in terms of being personal and aspirational to impact being more rigorous and measuring, managing, and now there's this new industry that's happening called assurance of impact. So there's a lot of buzzwords, but underlying the buzzwords, there are actual metrics. Even our HBS, they have this initiative called the Impact Weighted Metric that leads into accounting. Eventually, all of this will be more quantified, and that will hit the bottom lines of many of the startups today, which will be big organizations tomorrow. So the question here is how do you think the evolution of the investments or opportunities that you're looking at right now have evolved in terms of the integration of impact into the space? Do you think it is progressing fast enough, or do you think it's still at this early stage from your respective views?
Okay, so it's always been, I think this whole impact measurement business has always been a challenge. And as Philo said, it is a fast evolving space though, in the sense that, there's many different attempts to capture and explain and then to measure the impact. But from my perspective, impact, other than some things that lend themselves to measurement, like for example, climate is a big thing now, and there are all kinds of methodologies and also push for companies to measure their carbon footprint, their emissions, science-based targets, and I suppose, when you can quantify carbon, even though, sometimes it's hard to capture everything, at least, there's one way of, it's easier to kind of converge on measurement. But for things like happiness, I'm really curious. At some point, I'm going to ask Eric to really explain to me how they do it. But like social return, environmental return, people are trying. But I think we just have to accept that, not everything can be measured. And then it really has to come from, being clear that what your intention is, first of all, as an investor. What do you think the gaps are? But not just, do it in a very subjective way, right? Cross-check with others to see, whether that is really a real gap. And then challenge yourself to think, okay, what are the possible ways of looking at filling this gap? I find sometimes that we live in a world that's quite linear, and so we tend to want to think A leads to B leads to C, but not looking sideways to see and to look for other factors that may come into play. So, I applaud the effort. I think we do need to get more sophisticated when it comes to impact measurement. But let's not let perfect be the enemy of the good, right? So I think, it's something that we consistently try to improve on, but we may never get to perfect. I don't think we actually will.
And just building on that point, is there's a truism not everything that matters, and not everything that matters actually gets measured, unfortunately, but we're moving towards that direction at the moment. Eric?
Yeah, to us, I think every dollar should be invested to create impact in the world. And in fact, I have a recent conversation with my friend who is the deputy director of the European Investment Fund. He said now we're actually collectively thinking whether if we are tackling a solution, maybe we can just say this is contributing to the solution or not. So yes or no. Don't even need to measure. Just a waste of time and money. And simply say, oh, okay, you're trying to treat a Parkinson's disease. This is contributing to the path. Yes and no. So that actually may actually ease the mind of a lot of investors. Say, oh, am I creating impact, or how much are we creating? But basically, you're contributing to a solution that everyone wants to solve, like a very tricky disease or food security problem, or like the poverty in Africa or India. So to us, I think when every dollar is spent on impact, then we can actually relax our mind and try to say, okay, we try to enlarge and get more people onto the bandwagon and try to create impact altogether. And this is actually what the original purpose of setting up Happiness Capital is. We try to mobilize everyone to think about impact. Then when everyone is impactful, then you don't need to bother too much about how much impact, what kind of impact you're creating.
I think that's a very good segue. We have one minute to go, so I'd like to. I think the discussion impact is fairly clear at this point, and it is basically addressing: do you actually have a solution to what the problem you're trying to solve through your business model? Closing words in 30 seconds for both Annie and Eric, and I'll wrap up.
Okay. Something that I always try to be conscious about is while we think about impact, is also to think a few steps further to see if there might be any unintended consequences to what you do. Sometimes, you start with good intentions, but, again, this is where kind of the breadth comes in, right? As you try to pursue that solution to that question that you want to solve, hopefully you're not creating, other issues as well.
Unintended consequences. Eric?
To us, I think we try to ask entrepreneurs to think big, to impact more people, and also to have a solution that can benefit more people to the extreme. Just like 10x breakthrough in certain like disease treatment, or 10x breakthrough in the provision of new food to the world. You see the climate change this year, right? And I think eventually we might lose all the land for farming. So how do we actually feed so many people in the world in the next 50 years? So it's a big problem.
Thank you. So we'll wrap up by saying that in the past we talked about win-win solutions. How do you care for the environment while addressing your business model? I would add that through like the 3 W's. The first one is, what is the win for yourself? Why does it matter? What do you care about? What you're passionate about? And pursue it. The second one and the third one is basically winning for your company, your startup. What is the business model? Can you win? Can you scale your business model? And can you scale your impact simultaneously? The second one. And the third one is win for the planet, because we all know it's very clear with extreme weather risk, climate change, all of this stuff. It is happening here and now. We cannot wait. So if we are able to do all 3 W's in one go, that'll be the best. Want to thank our panelists for today's session, and have a good rest of the afternoon. We have the awarding ceremony afterwards. Thank you, Annie and Eric.
Thank you very much, Philo, Annie, Eric. If you could just stay on stage for a second, we have some gifts for you. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you, Philo. Thank you very much for a thoughtful, thought-provoking, very interesting panel. And for Philo for summarizing, actually. It's almost like you went to high-powered business school at some point in time. Yep. I'll do it for you. Here it is. Ready this time around.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gil. Great job. That's okay. So as we're cleaning up, we're coming to that moment I guess everyone's been waiting for. And thank you very much for soldiering on with us throughout the day. In particular, for those remaining few who are probably still online some 8 hours later, well done to you. Before we move into kind of the announcement that everyone's kind of waiting for, so the top 3 startups and the awarding of the grand prize winner, I'd like to take a moment once again to thank all of the supporters of ATEC, including our lead sponsor, UBS, Cyberport, Morrison Forster, obviously, and Baker McKenzie. Again, with SS&C Intralinks who helped us out with our F&B, which I hope you guys had a very good, enjoyable time over lunch. I'd also like to take a time to thank all the supporting alumni clubs who actually were silent participants throughout this entire kind of odyssey of bringing ATEC to you today, and also for their help and support shepherding, the various startups. We had over 100 nominated startups. So at one point in time, almost every regional club in Asia was somehow a participant in the ATEC Startup Competition. I'd also like to take time to thank you all as attendees for attending. I know there was a great desire to attend live in-person conference, so I'm glad to see everyone's faces here. And finally, I would like to thank, of course, the Cyberport team, our volunteer crew. I'm not sure if you realize, but ATEC itself is a volunteer organization. So none of this would have been possible without everyone here. You can see, especially some of our youngest volunteers, which came from some of the schools around here in Hong Kong, which we're hoping this proved to be kind of an educational, informative discussion today that kind of opened your eyes as to, what the innovation ecosystem kind of looks like here in Asia. And last but not least, I'd like to thank, of course, the ATEC organizing committee, who soldiered through many Zoom calls and schedule changes and time zones, in fact. So everyone's here. I won't name everyone by name, but I will give a special shout out to 2 people who aren't here today. Olivier Cottard, who is actually joining us now. I think he's out of quarantine. He's in France. And also for our ATEC chair, Frank Au, who has been behind the scenes all the way through. And it's now probably quite late for him in San Francisco. So with that said, without further ado, I've kept you in suspense long enough. It's time to announce our winners. We'll start. And actually, if we could get Baker McKenzie, Robert, would you like to come and help present the second runner-up? Karen, can you help? No, we're just doing second runner-up, first runner-up. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Just imagine a drum roll going off in your head. So our second runner-up, it was a very interesting vote, actually, to see between the live in-person audience, the online audience, and also for our high-powered VC judges in terms of where everyone sort of settled out at. So, should we move on to the slide? Our second runner-up is Pickupp. So congratulations to the team from Pickupp, Crystal. And congratulations to Columbia Business School. Oh. Can we get the whole thing in? Yeah. Actually, could we do one so we can actually get the Columbia Business School logo? I'm sure. I don't want to feel complaints later on, so. Okay, one more here. Great, thank you very much. Thank you. Congratulations. And for our first runner-up, I'd like to invite Thomas from Morrison Forster to help present the award. Now for our first runner-up, very close vote, by the way, between the grand prize winner and the first runner-up. So our first runner-up is OneDegree. So congratulations, Alvin. Congratulations once again to the University of Chicago. Take a photo. Should we? No, what's the best place? Here?
You got the logo?
Yeah. Everything separate out? Okay. Yeah. One more time. One more time. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations. And unfortunately, neither UBS or Cyberport could be here to present the grand prize, but I will be doing it on their behalf. And so, it's with great pleasure that I would announce this year's ATEC Startup of the Year is Lifespans. Congratulations. And congratulations to MIT Club of Hong Kong. Wave to your fan base over there.
Wow.
Congratulations. There you go. Thank you. You want to step over on this side maybe? And, one more time. Great. Congratulations once again. And just a reminder, all three winners will be sharing with the grand prize, the prize money of Hong Kong $200,000. So trust me, the check will be in the mail soon. You needn't worry. But thank you everyone for participating and for voting. We actually had quite a good turnout from both online and also live in-person voting itself. And I think, if we think about like the top three Lifespans, OneDegree, and Pickupp, I think they span a very interesting cross-section of the innovation ecosystem we have here in Hong Kong. I think, they represent some of the most interesting startup teams and possibly technologies that are leading the future. And it's a kind of a nice split between both financial services, healthcare, and also kind of traditional kind of logistics. So I think that does seem to resonate, I think, with kind of what's being built here in Hong Kong and sort of the Greater Bay Area. So with that said, I would also like to thank all the other remaining 5 startups. We do have awards here for you as well, and I guess we will, I'm not sure how many people are still here, so I think we'll find them individually and pass that on to them. So I think that brings us to the end of this year's ATEC 2021. There's only one last part, which is basically to invite everyone to kind of a VIP cocktail at Delaney's. And so we do have vouchers available for that. So hopefully we will see you all there in a few minutes. Once again, here's the fine print. The ATEC organizing committee, as you can tell, it's not just the people in this room, but everyone who supported us along the way. And pardon? And yes, sorry, the drinks will not be at Delaney's. Don't go there. Go to Interval Pharmacy. So we'll see you there. And I already mentioned Frank, actually. So thank you very much. And yes, let's step out of the way of the very important QR codes. This entire conference will be available online as well. So for those people who have somehow stepped away in the last 8 hours from their computer, you will be able to watch a replay of this. And please do follow us on our various social media channels for various updates, including all the photos from today, as well as some of the videos of the pitches. So once again, thank you very much for attending. You know, fingers crossed, we will hopefully see you here this time next year. And thanks once again for supporting ATEC. Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'd like to invite the steering committee to come on stage, including all our volunteers, actually. So for a group photograph. Oh, where is it? Chris? Do we have anyone from? Probably the big logo, I think. Yeah, let's just do the big logo. All right, I can tell all the students probably have to be kneeling because you guys are too tall, man. Okay, so okay, you guys want to take the front row, maybe like, yeah, maybe you join Shirley's front row down here. Are we doing just volunteers right now? Let's do everyone, and then let's do the steering committee after that. No, I think it's just here. Okay. We've done a lot of sponsors.
We're taking a photo.
No, we're gonna save it for the side report photograph because you know you're gonna have to.
Yeah, side report always after.
Okay.
Okay, finally.
Right.
Thanks, David. Okay, hold on.
Okay, can we just do the ATEC steering committee now, please?
Just the committee?
It's just the committee. Yeah.
It's just a bit weird for them to look at us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the vouchers, where are the vouchers available outside?
Outside.
Yeah, so the vouchers will be available just outside at the registration desk. Can I put this down? We don't need this. Yeah, just steering committee, I think. All right. The non-t-shirt wearers.
Yeah, you're the only. Should we do a thumbs up?
You gotta be consistent. Just do a thumbs up.
Okay.
Can't leave side report without doing one of these.
Oh, wait. What's that?
Huh?
How about thumbs up?
What? Didn't we do the thumbs up?
Okay, thank you. Thank
Great.
you. Great job.
No, I don't know. So thank you very much, everyone, and see you at Interval Pharmacy